Share my screen. And off we go. Okay, so into addition and subtraction algorithm stuff. We played with addition algorithms, and there was one I forgot to mention. I'm surprised I forgot to mention it because it's one of the algorithms that I actually use all of the time, and it is called the scratch or the dot addition algorithm. So scratch, ooh, that's not how you spell scratch. How about with a C? There we go, that looks better. Scratch or dot addition. And I usually do the scratch method, but the dot's pretty much the same, and I'll show a few different versions of it. And this is an algorithm, not a model, because it just helps us get a job done, and there's no explanation about why. An algorithm is just a process. So let's suppose I have just a list of numbers like 3, 8, 5, 4, 3, 7, 6, 5. Right? I got to add up a whole list of numbers. The one version of the scratch method is every time you get a 10, you just make a note of it with a scratch and then make a note of the ones you have also. So for example, 3 and 8 is 11, so I would go scratch 1, because that's a 10 and a 1. And then I just have to keep track of the 1. So 1 and 5 is 6, 6 and 4 is 10, so scratch 0. And then I just keep going. 3 and 7 would be a scratch 0, no ones to keep track of, right? So 6 and 5 would be a scratch 1, but the 1 really goes down there at that point. And then anytime I have a scratch, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the number of tens I need to keep track of. And I use this a lot. My wife teaches some exercise classes that involve music, and she's never sure if her iTunes playlist is stating the right time. Like, does she have enough music for the class? And so I usually look at her playlist and I scan the number, the time of each track and say, does it add up to 60 or close enough? And so I kind of do this in my head regularly. And I do the scratches on my fingers. Every time I get a 10, I just keep track of it on a finger and I just think about the ones. So I'll just repeat that again for a different list of numbers. So let's try 4 and 3 and 6 and 3 and 8 and 6 and 7 and 5. So I'm going to do the scratch a little bit different. I'm just going to think about the ones and make a scratch for the 10. So this is another version of it. And usually if I put it on paper, I scratch over the number. So a slightly different version of that same process. 3 and 4 is 7. 7 and 6 is 13. So I just scratch to make a note I got a 10. And I just, in my head, think about the 3 for 13. 3 and 3 is 6, and 8 is 14. I carry the 4. 4 and 6 is 10. I jump over to 7. 7 and 5 is 12. I write the 2, and then there were 1, 2, 3, 4 tens that I had to keep track of. Okay. So that's scratch addition, and there's a couple variations on it. The first one I did is where I scratch for a 10 and I write the ones next to it, and I only keep the ones going down. Scratch every time I get a 10. The other way is you just put a scratch on the number where you found the 10 and think the ones in your head. Another version of this is with dots instead of scratches. And there's a homework problem related. So I'm just going to repeat, let's say that first column right there. 3, 8, 5, 4, 3, 7, 6, 5. And I think I got them right. 5, 6, 7, 3, 4, 5, 8, 3. Yeah. So the dot method is exactly the same, except I don't write the ones, I just think them. And I put a dot every time I get a 10. So 8 and 3 is a 10, so I make a dot. Sorry, 8 and 3 is 11. I make a dot, keep the 1 in my head. 1 and 5 is 6, and 4 is 10, dot. No ones plus 3 is 3. 3 and 7 is a 10, no ones. 6 and 5 is 11, and then the 1 from 11 goes there, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4 tens. So that is the scratch or dot algorithm. And again, there's a couple variations on it. In the homework, I ask you to try this variation here of the scratch and this variation here of the dot method. And I had one person email me about, what the heck's the dot method? That's the dot method. Are there questions on the dot method? Let's see, I got a few things in the chat. Okay, those were earlier. So it makes sense. And you can do it for multiple columns. It doesn't have to be just ones. Let's try it for a double column just for fun. There isn't one like this in the homework, but it's doable. So new page. Let's see, suppose I had 25 and 47 and 56 and 28 and 32, 75, and one more for fun. How about 87? So I'm going to use the scratch where I keep it in my head. So write those numbers down and give it a try with me. I'm going to use a different color to scratch. So 5 and 7 is 12, so I scratch and think 2. 2 and 6 is 8, and 8 is 16. 6 and 2 is 8, and 5 is 13. 3 and 7 is 10. Scratch, put a 0. So then I need to keep track of these scratches. They all jump to the next column. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 scratches. So you could either write a 4 at the top or think 4. I'm going to write like I carried it, but you don't have to because it's right there. So I would usually think 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 and 4 is 10. No ones, go to the 5. That's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then no ones, so 7, 8 is 15. Scratch, put the 5 for 15. And then I have 1, 2, 3 10s there, which gets carried over here because 10 10s is 100. So this list of numbers should add up to 350 if I did my scratches right. Could do the same thing with a dot if you wanted to. All right, so that is the scratch algorithm for addition.